welcome back to another episode of Boss Fight Breakdowns. Today we'll be progressing down the line of boss fights that are found within the Xavier Mansion and continuing into the next area of the story quest with a look at two bosses in particular and a brief explanation of a story quest detail that you'll want to keep in mind. So let's go ahead and jump into those boss fights, but real quickly before we do, check to see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, take a moment and do so, as this subscription is free and easy and there's content coming to you on a daily basis. And don't forget to leave a like on the video if you found this helpful, and be sure to comment the boss fights that you enjoyed or are struggling with so we can pay some extra focus to them in the upcoming installments of this series. So without further ado, let's jump into the boss fights of today's video. So the first boss that we're looking at in today's video is Magneto, and this is the Power Stone infused version of Magneto, but his moveset is pretty familiar with what you would already come to expect from him based off of his regular moveset and abilities. Of course, if you're encountering him for the first time, it can be a little bit tricky to figure out, but he has a couple of different attacks, most of them either being ranged or localized based off of his standard abilities. But honestly, the best thing that you're going to want to do in this fight is focus on just laying into him with your ability and synergy attacks, because he doesn't really do anything super special. Now, one thing that you do want to be cautious of is these sentinels that pop in. They will explode after a short portion, but as we've seen previously with these characters, you can actually go ahead and use the cores that they drop to your advantage. They deal massive amounts of damage to the boss in character, as well as immediately stagger him out. And I went ahead and unloaded my extreme attacks onto Magneto here. Didn't get as much damage in as I was really hoping to, but we're just looking to finalize what's remaining of the fight against Magneto here. Though he does have some pretty interesting ranged capabilities and dashes about the circle, so he can be a little bit difficult to track down, but at the end of the day, he is pretty straightforward, so just keep a pendant finger on your roll so you can get out of the way of any of his heavier hitting attacks, and take into consideration that he will kind of zip around to throw you off his scent and make the fight even that much more difficult for you as he progresses through. Now, he does summon in those sentinels every now and again, and those are easily the things that you want to be the most cautious of, because you can take them out, yes, but they deal massive amounts of damage after a very short detonation period. And as you're about to see here with Doctor Doom, you want to make sure that you're taking on these sentinels with a character that has massive amounts of damage output, or you're going to get caught in the middle of the blast, and that's not going to bode well for you at all. But one final adamantium uppercut from Wolverine there does the trick quite handily. Now, immediately following the fight with Magneto, there's going to be 3 different segments. I'm only highlighting 2 of them here, and they are the latter 2. The first one is a segment of battles against some Outriders. That's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It's basically introducing you to the grunts of the Black Order and how to deal with them. But the second 2 phases of this fight are a very one-sided match against Corvus, and then against Corvus and Proxima Midnight. And something you really need to keep in mind with these segments is you're not meant to beat them. So don't get discouraged, don't get upset. This is very much a power curve that you're not meant to exceed or excel at to any degree. So honestly, you're probably just going to be off to the best in letting your team get butchered down by these characters, because there's really nothing you can do, and there's no extra prize or benefit if you are able to take them out on your own terms. Now, it's certainly possible. I've done it myself as an added challenge, at least with the solo Corvus fight, but it's, again, not something that is expected or required in order to progress in the main story quest. So don't hold yourself to that standard, as you're going to be stuck here for quite a while. Now, The one thing that you do want to keep in mind is, so you look over to the right side of the screen as we get closer to the end of the fight with Corvus and Proxima, is you will be given a transition away from the fight, and all of your team members will become revived at that point in time. And you just need to hightail it out of there as best you can. Characters with increased mobility are best for this. I've found that characters that can fly, such as Doctor Doom, Captain Marvel, or even the Spider-Verse characters like Miles, Spider-Man, Spider-Gwen, Venom, those who can web sling and kind of get away tend to do really well in this fleeing section, mainly because of the obstructions that pop up in the path, but you just want to get out of that as quickly as you can. Now, there's quite a large break between that last segment against Magneto before you get to your next boss fight, but it is a fight against Doctor Strange. And this fight has two phases, and we haven't seen one of those in a minute, so we'll want to take our time and kind of break this down. Now, the first phase is very straightforward. Doctor Strange has all of his standard kits and abilities available, the same ones that you would see once you have him as a playable character upon defeating him here. And the thing that is a little bit annoying or frustrating with Doctor Strange's fight is when he transitions into his second phase, because he is given some imbued and increased abilities from Dormammu, and that's where most people tend to struggle with this fight, because the first one is really straightforward, the first phase is really straightforward. But as soon as he transitions into this second phase, he gains a couple of these elemental orbs that crop in to make things a little more difficult. And all of his attacks, though they do mirror standard attacks that you would see or expect from him, they do have amplified damage and amplified effects, such as his bolts of Boltak being infused somewhat with the Flames of the Faltine. The Flames of the Faltine themselves do a lot more damage, and what I'm assuming is the equivalent of the Bands of Sidorak. He summons a bunch of flaming orbs that will either drop from the sky or rain out in front of him in a pattern across the screen. And that's what tends to make this fight quite difficult, is there's a lot of high damage abilities that he has and dishes out, and they are very wide in their field of effect as well. Now, I made a bit of a mistake in this particular fight, particularly with Miles, as I activated that extreme attack of his way too far away from Doctor Strange in order for it to be any good or of any benefit here. But in terms of transitioning through the fight, it's pretty similar to the first phase, where you're going to get your best damage in upon staggering him out, and there's no added quirk to doing that. It's not more difficult at all in terms of the actual damage that you deal to him, but it will be a little more of a challenge to actually get in on him to lay those attacks in, based off of the fact that his attacks deal excessive amounts of damage and he does dole them out basically non-stop. There's no let-up or no relinquish to his attacks here. The other thing you'll want to keep in mind is one of Dormammu's attacks with those flame geysers do pop up from the ground. You do have an early warning with the area of effect popping up on the ground right beneath your feet before the geysers actually go off, and you can do a combat roll away from them in order to preserve your own health bar there. And again, if you haven't invested in the masteries to regain a portion of your health upon using your extreme attacks, please do. You're not going to regret it. It's going to be one of the best mastery pickups that you will ever obtain, and it will save your life on multiple occasions. So that's going to do it for today's boss fight breakdown. And I know that this has been a very productive series for me, as well as going back through and revisiting these different boss fights. So I do look forward to bringing another installment of this to you on Wednesday. And again, if you are struggling with boss fights or there's things that you want me to have a look at with it, please feel free to leave me a comment, as I am more than happy to outline those specifics to you as well. So thanks again for watching, and you have yourself a fantastic rest of your day.